Welcome everyone to this lecture, which is aimed at giving you a better understanding of the NS204 exam that you're scheduled to take this December. This lecture is designed to tell you what to bring into the exam, how the exam will actually work, what will be covered on the exam, and some small pieces of advice along the way to avoid making the same mistake others who have taken this exam in the past have made. To begin, we'll talk about what you should be thinking about bringing into the exam. In short, the most important thing to bring is a working pen or pencil. We'll get into it in more detail in the next couple of slides, but this exam only requires you to pick the right answer for 100 multiple choice questions. There is no graphing or long essay type questions, so provided you can bring something that allows you to mark 100 X's in the answer grid, then you should be covered. The only other piece of equipment that you'll need is a working calculator. Some of you will be able to attempt the calculation questions without the need of this, but I would advise you to bring one with you to either do the calculation itself or at least use it to review the answers that you've made calculated yourself. If you fail to bring a calculator with you on the day, there is little to no chance that any invigilator will be able to supply you with one. So make sure that you bring one, and one that works. I have had students in the past ask could they use their mobile phone for the calculator app, and this will not be permitted. Anyone who is caught using a mobile phone in the exam runs the risk of having their exam attempt cancelled and being ejected from the exam hall. So you've been warned on this. When you arrive at the exam hall and you've found your allocated seat, you will be given the exam paper face down. Do not turn this paper over until instructed to do so. The invigilators want to ensure that everybody starts at the exact same time in the interest of fairness. So resist all temptation to look and wait until they've given you the signal to turn the paper over to begin. When you get the paper, my advice is to read the instructions on the front and then quickly go through the different pages to make sure that all of them are present. You should all get 100 MCQ questions and also 2 pages at the back that constitute the answer grid. The invigilators will also give you an official DCU exam booklet. No answers are to be put into this booklet, and they should only be put onto the answer sheets. It is DCU's policy that anyone sitting an exam needs to be issued an exam booklet. You're more than welcome to use this booklet to maybe work out calculations and do some rough work if it helps you figure out the answers to certain questions. But you will not receive any marks for any rough work that is contained in this book. I will only be correcting those answers which feature on the answer sheets contained within the main exam paper, i.e. the grid which is indicated on the left-hand side of this slide. If you make sure that this answer grid is fully completed by the end of the exam, then there should be no complications. After you've ensured that all the pages are present and accounted for, the next thing I would say to do is fill in your details on both the exam paper and also the exam booklet. Read the instructions carefully on both and make sure that you've inputted the relevant details required. I've highlighted these areas with the red boxes on the image on the left. After you've finished your exam, it is your responsibility to make sure that the exam booklet, the exam paper, and the answer sheets are all returned to the invigilator. The best way to do this is to insert the exam paper and exam sheets into the booklet itself and then hand that up as one item. Any exams that are returned with any of the above missing will be marked as a failed attempt, so make sure that all the sheets are returned as requested. There is a chance that the invigilators will provide you with a tag that can sometimes be used in exam situations to link several booklets together. I would recommend that you do not try to force the tag through the exam paper at the risk of causing damage to the paper and your booklet, and instead simply insert the exam and the answer sheets into the booklet and do no more. In terms of the exam itself, as mentioned, it's 100 multiple choice questions, which you'll be given 5 potential answers to. Every question on the exam only has one right answer. As such, as you work through the exam, your job is to place an X in the right column which corresponds to the answer which you feel is correct for that particular question. Anyone who places multiple X's in these columns will not have that particular question corrected. Instead, If you feel that you've made a mistake and you want to change your answer, you'll notice that there's a column called Change to the right of the 5 options of A, B, C, D and E. If you want to change your answer, you can simply write in the letter of the option that you wish to change your answer to. In these instances, if the change column is used, that answer will be taken as your first choice, and any answers marked in the columns A, B, C, D or E for that question will be disregarded. Try to think through every question carefully so that you don't end up in a situation where you want to make multiple changes to a single question. This can cause the answer sheet to become very difficult to correct, and as mentioned, any answers which are not made clearly to me will not be corrected at all. As you work through the exam, your answer grids will start to fill up. Make sure that every single question has an attempt made at it. There is no negative marking on this exam, so even for those questions that you're not sure of the answer, use your best guess to pick one that makes the most sense in the hopes that you might be able to obtain marks for that. Leaving any of these questions blank is of no benefit, so make sure to try and answer everything. In terms of the content that will feature in the exam, every topic that was covered, whether online or in class, will feature on the exam. There isn't a single section that is left out. I will say that there is less emphasis on the introductory lectures that I placed exclusively online to cover each physiological system individually. Some questions may relate to aspects of those lectures, with the context typically on pharmacology relevant to that system. This isn't a physiology exam of sorts, it's a pharmacology exam, so the context of the questions are all with respect to testing your ability to diagnose a particular situation and demonstrate an understanding of the effects pharmacological agents have in these instances. Of note, pay close attention to the content on injection technique and also the support lectures that were provided for the calculations that we covered in the module. Content within these lectures are sure to appear. So to give an overview, these are the different lectures that we covered over the course of the module, whether online or in person. And the exam will have questions spanning all of these sections. The structure is as follows on the left-hand side. As you can see, each overarching topic is covered to a certain degree, with some sections having more questions as compared to others, but every section is covered nonetheless. The questions on the exam will be sequenced as indicated on the left. I did not shuffle the questions on the paper, so you're guaranteed that the first 6 questions will be on our first couple of lectures on what is pharmacology. The following 6 questions will be on our lectures on pharmacokinetics, and so on and so forth. This should hopefully help you focus your attention on those sections that may come more easy to you before tackling those which may have proved slightly more difficult. I appreciate that some sections of the module will come easier to some people over others, and I would recommend that with respect to those sections that you play to your strengths. When studying, try focusing on obtaining 100% on those sections that you find easiest. At the end of the day, you need 40% to pass this exam, and while obtaining 100% will be the ideal situation, it may be easier to start off with those sections that you find easiest and build on those sections to gauge how much study across all of the sections you will require to stand the best chance of doing well in this exam. So for example, if you found the section on the nervous system particularly difficult, and you know that it will take extra study time to get to the point where you'll be confident that you'll obtain 100% in that particular section, it might be worth prioritising other sections in the interest of scoring higher across them than putting all of your energy into obtaining 6% in the nervous system section alone. You'll have noticed that I've been putting up practice quizzes on the Loop page over the course of the semester. These questions are highly representative of the types of questions that you can expect in the exam. So as part of your study, I would recommend taking these quizzes and seeing how you do to gauge how well you then might do from the same section in the exam. I've also uploaded some mock exam papers that are based on some of the content from these different quizzes, but I've structured it in the same style of the exam. In this way, after you've attempted the individual quizzes on each section, you can then take the mock exams and gauge how well you'll do in the actual exam itself. If you go online, you'll find past exam papers for NS204. These are over 10 years old, and the course has been significantly updated and changed since then, both in terms of the content and also the style of the exam. Do not waste time practicing these past exam papers. Instead, focus on the content on loop, and that's the best way to go about doing well in this exam. In terms of what the questions will cover, as mentioned, the questions asked in the individual quizzes are highly representative of what you can expect. And those of you who have already engaged with the quizzes will know that some questions are quite direct and test you on your knowledge on certain disease states and drugs used to treat them, as covered directly in the lecture notes. So for example, you might see a question that asks, sodium bicarbonate can be applied to treat imbalances and blood pH by having what effect? This relates directly to content that we covered in the renal system, and this question would be likely to pop up in that block of questions for the renal system in the exam. However, some questions will examine your understanding of the topic by testing your application of knowledge from one section and applying it to another. Again, there are examples of this in the online loop quizzes, but to give an example, a question might ask, sodium bicarbonate can be administered to those suffering from gastrointestinal reflux, owing to it having what effect? Answering this question relies on your ability to recall how sodium bicarbonate works from content in the renal system and applying that to the context of a disease state in the gastrointestinal system. There are a few questions like this throughout the exam, so be prepared to apply your knowledge from one section to contexts from another. As you work through the exam, please pay attention to your time. You have more than enough time to complete the 100 questions in 2 hours. The mock exams online on Loop will give you a good indication of that. But at the same time, an exam hall is a very different environment to that where you may be doing the practice quizzes. So pay close attention to time with respect to completing the exam. If you think about it, this works out to be just over 1 minute for you to consider and work out each question. Some of you will be able to answer in an instance, whereas others, such as the calculations for example, may require more time. Balance things as best you can and consider setting yourself goals. For example, after the 1 hour mark, check to see if you have at least 50 questions done. If you've more than 50 done, then you're on track to finish before the 2 hours. But if you've less than 50 done after 1 hour, you may need to adjust your pace. A couple of things to be mindful of with respect to time is that I've seen in previous years some students like to determine the answers of the questions on the exam sheet. Their aim is to work out the answers fully before then looking to transfer all of the answers into the answer grid at the back of the exam. This could be a useful strategy for working out your answers in advance, so that you're definitely giving me up a clean answer sheet to then read afterwards. If you do opt for this strategy, do please make sure that you leave yourself enough time to be able to transfer these answers from the exam sheet into the answer grid. Furthermore, try to leave yourself enough time to review the answers that you put into the answer grid and make sure that everything is accurate. I have had students select answers in the exam paper that then differ to those that they put into the answer sheet. This was an error made on their part when transferring the information from the exam sheet to the answer grid. So try to avoid this by giving yourself enough time to complete this and review it if at all possible. On the day of the exam, I will be available and I will be visiting every location where the exam is being held. My job initially when I visit the exam centres is to provide my contact number so that the invigilators can call me if there are any problems. So my initial visit to your exam centre will be brief because I typically need to visit at least 4 different locations on the day. So if you notice something isn't right, just mark it for attention and signal for an invigilator. The invigilator will then ring me and I will get to your location as quickly as possible. Please continue with the exam as best you can until I get there to answer your question. Do not burn up valuable time waiting for me to arrive to address a question on a single one when you could be getting on with answering the remaining 99. Also, please appreciate that if I'm running late getting to your exam hall, chances are that I'm dealing with another question in another location. I have this time blocked out on my timetable, so there will be no other distractions on my side other than being available to answer any questions that might pop up from this exam. So as mentioned, if there is an issue, make note of it and continue with your attempt, and I'll get to you as soon as I can. That very much covers the NS204 exam. If there are any further questions on this in advance of the exam itself, please let me know and I'll respond to these questions by posting it as a topic on the NS204 announcement section on the Loop page so that everybody gets the answer. Try not to fret too much about this exam. Focus your study based on what we've detailed here. Use the resources on Loop and you'll be absolutely fine. So best of luck with the exam and thanks for your attention.